Hi, welcome. This is Gifted and Talented Why and How. It is our third of 4 trainings. It's the final training for those of you that are returning points of contact in Gifted and Talented. It is the third of 4 for those of you that are new to your role this year. This is going to be the brief recap of what was our longer range training earlier, but hopefully it will be helpful still to you if you're getting to listen to my voice and some examples as we go through some of the PowerPoints. Here are some of our goals for today. One is understanding why, because the how doesn't matter a lot, and children and teachers and parents become pretty disengaged if we know, okay, it's a legal mandate, but why does it really matter anyway? Which is why we're going to really focus on programming and making some meaningful goals. The next then is going to be the how, which I know we're really at that point right now as we're getting ready to and starting to write our ALPs for the year. And then last, we had some time where we talked about how to create an ALP. The 4th training, even if you weren't required to go to them, it's going to give you some additional ideas on how to write an ALP. So watch that 4th training video as well. And it'll give you some time to collaborate with others. Now, at this point, of course, you're not collaborating with others. That was in our in-person meeting. But please then start playing with how to write a SMART goal that is tied to student passions, that we can track across the year, that's tied to standards. Use me to help you with that, and make sure to send them to me as you're working on them so you can get feedback before you do your final inputs in Rich Frontline. Let's start for a moment with the why. That photo is of my son, and he's a good example of what's called asynchrony. And that means that we know that gifted children are more likely to be asynchronous in terms of their learner profile, or in terms of their profile in general. So all of us might be a little stronger in math, weaker in reading, better one-on-one, a little weaker in group situations. So if we were going to graph out how we were versus average, it might look like this. But the further away a child gets on either end of the spectrum, as far as having a very low or very high IQ, they might be more likely to have these bigger asynchronies. And gifted children might be a first grader that is reading at the 6th grade level, maybe comprehending at an 8th grade level, but socially is functioning more like a 4.5-year-old. That's an interesting, complex, difficult pattern for the child and then for everyone that's in their lives as well. That's why we want some additional programming and some additional expertise in terms of the individuals that work with them, just like we would expect for a child, say, with a disability. We know that for children that don't have their needs met, that are, for a variety of reasons, maybe in a program or a school that isn't working with them and their unique needs, they can be at risk for additional problems. That could be externalizing, meaning behavior problems, right? Any kiddo whose needs aren't being met in school, because maybe they're bored or unchallenged or can't relate to others, or on the other end, maybe it's too difficult, they're more likely to act out. That's the externalizing problems. The internalizing problems can be related to depression, anxiety, perfectionism, underachievement, possibility of getting into trouble. Some of our schools that work with these kids have seen this, right? Gifted children that have maybe disengaged or used their gifts for getting into trouble when they haven't been supported in other ways. We also know, just frankly, these are the next generation of hopefully the leaders, people that are able to be visionaries, that are able to have the skills to solve world problems, help make the world a better place, come up with a cure for cancer, things like that. So we really, we want them, we need them for ourselves as well, not just so that they feel better, do better, but also for everybody else. So to give you the first scenario, my son, who's the little guy pictured right here, when he started school, I had him at a great school as far as I knew the teachers there. I knew that they loved him dearly, but it was pretty traditional, and there wasn't a lot related to his giftedness. And he wasn't doing anything wrong, but he couldn't kind of sit there and just be quiet and do as they were told all the time. So we went to the principal sometimes. When the principal quit, he was reporting that he was telling everyone that it was because he was a bad kid. He was 5 at the time, so he was not off to a great start. I found a school that he's at now that's a charter that does a lot more in terms of supporting gifted kids in a wide range of ways. And, it's not like he's doing perfectly now, but he now reports that he wants to be a teacher when he grows up, and he kind of brags about school. So it's an awesome shift, and that's what we want, of course, for all of our children. I wanted to read this scenario at the bottom. I realize part of it is cut off with my head at the bottom, but I'll read it to you. Johnny, I just used that name, it's a fake name, would not attend to the first grade lessons. He'd lie on his back, look up at the ceiling. He could count as well as sixth graders, perform arithmetic, square numbers, and so on. Bored with the material, but not knowing how to verbally formulate or articulate his difficulty, he'd just drift away, lay on the floor. When asked what he was doing when he was lying on the floor, he said, mostly mathematical calculation or living in my imaginary land. Two things I want you to notice here. This is a problem that's happened for a long time. This is from 1930. Leda Hollingworth, and she was one of the four mothers of gifted education and studied the highest IQs, tracked these children to see what they ended up doing as adults. And a lot of times the stories weren't great. They were kind of lackluster. A lot of these kids didn't do much. They weren't supported a lot in their education, in spite of not just being gifted, but prodigious, right? Highly gifted, profoundly gifted. So we're trying to help stop that from happening. But as you can see, that story sounds very similar nowadays, right? This kiddo shouldn't be accelerated or shouldn't start school yet because they're not socially ready. Well, the problem is a lot of times they're just not thinking like other kiddos, and so they're certainly, when you're 30, I don't say, hey, I'm going to put you in this class with only 30-year-olds because that's where you're going to be all day, right? You're going to gravitate to people based on interest, based on skill level, and so on. So we want to be much more individualized about that with kiddos. We took a moment, and I would love for you to let me know how you feel. And it could be good, bad, everything in between. I know that many people have very different experiences and perceptions of what gifted is. And so do your family. So some families might be extremely supportive and they want to be involved and they get it, or they really know a lot about gifted, and other people that say, my kid's not one of those people, right? My kid's not gifted, or what are you talking about? I know I was in a group called High Potential in high school, and it was based on test scores, and they were looking and they were thinking, why? Vanessa's not doing anything, but it looks like she should be able to. I didn't want to be in that group. To me, that was not a good thing. It was, I thought that was nerdy or whatever. So take away the label. Let's just think about the needs that these kids or adults need. But please take a moment. What were your experiences personally? What were your experiences professionally so far? Good, bad, and everything in between. And of course, we're not sharing right now as this is a video, but let me know. And I promise I've heard a wide range, and I just want you to let me know where you're coming from so I know how to best support you. So how are we going to meet their needs? We're going to come up with a plan of action. That's the building plans that by now you should have submitted in one form or another, either the formalized template, or if you're at the high school level, just your bullet points of what is it that you're doing. What are the programs and the services that you do that meet the gifted kids' needs? Maybe what are a couple things that you want to get going on this year as well? Please remember that I'm a resource and the district is a resource for helping with advanced learning plans, pulling up data, building plans, and then programming in general. So that could be curriculum resources that you're looking for, or parent resources or student resources for both affective and academic needs. This whole chunk of the lecture, I'm going to skip past many slides now. You have what's called the ALP cookbook. It is a step-by-step procedure for how to do ALPs. And we have step-by-step procedures for going into Enrich and pulling reports and working on submitting data for a student for an ALP as well. So what I encourage you to do, I think you've all done this at this point, get into Enrich, use the step-by-step access guide that I sent you. If for some reason you need another or you can't find that, please let me know right away. So I'm just going to show a couple slides and then move toward the end of this presentation. There's a nice poem that one of my coworkers, Christy, wrote for you. So the cookbook, those steps help To develop student ALPs, you see, the suggested ingredient listed has been written for you. Experienced chefs may choose to add or delete a few. Let this recipe serve as your guide and know that we are on your side. If after you follow the recipe steps, you have a question or two, reach out to your coordinator, that's Christy or I, and we'll be happy to collaborate and help you. It talks about all the materials that you would gather. Remember, you can always reference your GT teacher handbook if you are needing handouts, identification tools, you want more information in general. That's the first place to look. Sorry, there's a fly that keeps flying by me. It talks about the step-by-step instructions for how to get in Frontline Enrich. And again, I believe all of you have done that at this point. I can help you through that, and please follow your step-by-step guides. That's collecting all the data. The important piece to remember here, this has to be a collaborative effort, so get connected to the parents as much as possible. Certainly the child as much as possible. What's their passions, what's driving them, and you're wanting them to understand what it is, and let them help drive what you choose. They're going to be SMART goals, so remember they're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, attainable, they're relevant, they're rigorous, they're targeted and timely. So it should go across the year. There should be some progress monitoring, and it should be driven by their interests. Whoop, sorry, it went right past a whole bunch. These are a couple examples that originally we put kind of some smiley faces or marks next to, and honestly what I would do for all of them is just say what's good about them and what can we do to further improve them. So remember, SMART, we want it to be student driven, we want it to be based on passions, and we want it to be, how are you going to timeline it? So if we look at the top left, it says the student will be able to solve complicated things such as algebraic expressions and so on, as evidenced by 10th grade problem set and evaluated with a rubric. Attach rubrics if you're using them. Complicated sounds like kind of a value judgment. I would wonder as well if this is passion or student driven. It might be based on what they're interested in or their career interests later. And we could add a bit of detail there. I gave an example related to this in our fourth training as well, so I'm not going to spend much time on that. If you'd like to look at examples more later, we can do that again. And here's some affective goals. Remember, affective can be related to leadership, self-determination, self-advocacy. It could be a service learning project. It could be dealing with stress or anxiety management, all of those types of things. So it should be across the year. Some of these examples, I would just want some more clarification on. So if we look at the bottom, we've got they'll visit at least one four-year college or major related to their strength. It sounds like maybe something that all the students do, also something that could be done in an hour or two. So think across the year, think a little more deep and rich about what that student of yours is going to do and how they can maybe capstone, have a share out at the end as well. When you send me your examples or your tentative goals, I can give you some additional feedback. So all of these slides you can review on your own. I think one of the easiest ways is the step-by-step Enrich Access Guide, and it will show you how to do that. Remember, all of your goals are going to be standards-based. For affective goals, you can look at standards in in health and physical education, and it will have things related to general health and leadership. You can also look at the NAGC, that's the National Association for Gifted Children, affective goals. If you Google that, or if you ask me for a copy, you can get them there as well, and then you just enter it right in with your data. Versus the drop-down menu. Oftentimes there's a drop-down menu, affective, not always. You might enter some of it yourself in the actual typed part of your document. So this whole piece is the step-by-step. Make sure you're clicking send, of course. Finalize and save. And then the main thing, please let me know your personal goals. Your program plan was already due at this point. Your ALPs are due October 27th. That's for new students and continuing students. So when we look at the list within Enrich of ALPs or gifted, that's going to pull students that already have their 3 data points and they're ready for an ALP to be written. That's that October 27th deadline. If you have someone else that you're watching that maybe has 1 data point or 2 data points, but not all 3, you keep working on that and continue working toward including them in your official identification. So that's the why and how. Hopefully watching these videos, touching base with me, and checking in with others that have been in these trainings as well will help you as you continue to create your ALPs. Thank you.